is at hand. Your victory is nearer than you first believe. Your victory is right in front of you. Your victory is around the corner. Look at your neighbor. Tell your neighbor, face your giant. Who your giant is, I don't care how big your giant is. The bigger the problem, the bigger God will show up by His presence. The more God you need, the more God will come on the scene. Look at your neighbor. Neighbor. The bigger your problem, the bigger God shows up. The bigger your situation, the bigger God comes on the scene. He said, David, you're just a kid, and he's a man of war. You can't do nothing, David, against this giant. But David gave them this testimony, and they took David to the king. And the only thing David wanted to know, if y'all heard the story, the only thing David kept on asking was, what am I going to get when I defeat this giant? What's the prize? Look at your neighbor. And ask your neighbor, tell him, say, neighbor, there's a prize for defeating your giant. Look at your neighbor, tell your neighbor, there's a reward for defeating your giant. Neighbor, look at your neighbor one more time. In fact, give a high five. Tell them, say, neighbor, are you ready? Are you ready to get your victory? David said, just let me at it. Just show me where he is. I said, David, can't you hear him walking up and down the valley? David said, I'll go out and I'll go meet him. Saul said, David, you're not a man of war. But since you're convinced that you can beat this enemy, let me put my arm on you. But I heard David say, it don't fit. It's not my size. It's not how I get my victory. Look at your neighbor. Tell your neighbor, I can't do it your way. I can't do it like you. But I can do it the way God gave me to do. Maybe for you, you can sing until the presence of the Lord falls on your life. Maybe you can fast until God destroys every yoke. Maybe you can pray until God opens the windows of heaven. Maybe you can just ask and He'll send a ministering angel. But I got to do it the way God gave it to me. I got to do it the way God gave it to me. I got to do it like you. I got to do it like God gave it to me. That's why I'm always asking God for a word. God, that's all I need is just one word. God, if you give me a word, I'll stand on it. If you give me a word, You got to do it. The way God gave it to you. David said, where is it? He said, well, he's walking up and down the valley. David said, well, let me go out to meet him. And on the way, the Bible said that David stopped by a brook and he picked up 5 smooth stones. But they say, well, he only needed 1. But let me tell you why he picked up 5. Because for all of the Philistine cities, they had a champion. Goliath was the champion of Gath. But they also had Ekron. They had El Shando. They had 5 cities. And every one of the cities had a champion. So when David went out to face Goliath, he did not know whether or not he was going to have to take out the other 4 champions also. But when he went not only to defeat the one giant, he went prepared to defeat all of the giants. He went prepared to defeat all of the enemies. He went to tear down everything that was in the enemy's head. David is out there standing before Goliath. And Goliath looks at him. Said, well, I'm insulted. I'm insulted. I thought they was going to send a warrior out here to defeat me, to fight with me. And they didn't sit out here. This little boy. I am insulted. But David said, but I got a word. I think it's there in 17 and around about the 47th verse. David said, but I got a word. And the word that I got was this: that the battle is not mine. It's the Lord's. Look at your neighbor. I'm going to quit y'all. But look at your neighbor. Let's tell your neighbor. When you face your giant, take me up to B flat. Thank you, sir. When. Oh, take me to see. Take me to see.
Yeah.
Look at your neighbor. Tell your neighbor. When you face your giant, I don't care how big your giant is. I don't care how big your giant is. I don't care how big your giant is. When you face your giant, you ain't gonna have to fight in the battle, because He established